welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alun, and I'm here with the ever-industrious Adam.
Oh, Alan, how are you?
Oh, I'm very enthusiastic this week. I don't know if you could tell from my introduction, but I'm rearing to go.
I can. It's infectious. It's infectious. I'm feeling your energy.
Do you feel infected by it? Well, that's ever so good, because today, Adam, I want to get back to the roots, the heart, the meat of tripology, and tell a little bit of a travel story from one of my times backpacking on the road in South America. Would you be interested in hearing it?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I can't wait. Go on.
Yeah, so I'm going to endeavour to captivate you and enthrall you with a tale, because I think on Tripology we talk about these cerebral ideas of travel, the philosophy of backpacking and all that jazz, but fundamentally we want to inspire people to book a ticket, get a backpack on and get off on the road. So maybe the best way to really do that is with a travel story. What do you think?
Especially told by you, someone as eloquent and as articulate and as poetic as you are.
Since time immemorial, people have traded stories around the campfire, and today will be no different. So here I was. I've talked a little bit about using Workaway as a method to backpack continuously without having to run out of money too badly, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Workaway, fantastic platform and community.
It's an amazing platform, and this was one of those times. I was in South America. I was traveling all the way from Buenos Aires in Argentina up to Sao Paulo in Brazil, where I was going to finish my trip in South America with, for the first time in a long time, a return flight to the UK. And at the point that this story takes place, I'd been traveling for maybe 7 months on that journey. I was haggard. Wow. I was tired. I'd been backpacking for a long time. My bank account was getting all skinny and deflated, and I thought, what a better way to remedy this situation and continue my trip but to do a workaway. And I've explained to the listeners at some points that I am nothing if not an animal lover. So I went on the Workaway platform. I typed in animals, animales, creatures into the search engine and found a host of workaway opportunities in South America that were with animals, right?
Yeah, awesome.
And I was in Bolivia.
Okay.
I was in the capital of Bolivia, La Paz. I was traveling with some friends. And I found a workaway opportunity quite nearby, just a bus ride away, in a place called Rurrenabaque, where I would have the opportunity to work with capuchin monkeys, work with spider monkeys, work with Bolivian red howlers in a very ethical rehabilitation facility that would take these animals that had been used in the pet trade, rehabilitate them into natural groups in the wild, and then release them, back to live fulfilling lives as monkeys on trees in the wild. It was a great opportunity. So I sent them a big long email explaining why I was the man for the job, and ultimately was awarded the opportunity to go and work with these monkeys.
That's incredible. Had you had any prior experience?
The only prior experience I had working with monkeys
living in the UK
was in my dreams, Adam. I had no experience with animals at all, really. So, it goes to show, doesn't it, that if you wanted to work with anything simian in the UK, you would need a string of letters after your name.
Totally,
but
yeah.
In another country, a can-do attitude, an ethical mindset, and the ability to get stuck in may well be all you need. You'll go to an organisation that ethically and in a way that's in accordance with the local laws and regulations, deals with these animals, and they'll train you up to be able to have that experience. So they basically offered me a place.
My goodness. And, when it comes to working with animals, you're an animal lover. I love animals. It's wonderful being around them, and we both share experiences working on a farm. But there's something about primates, monkeys, that affect us in a different way, I think. They're kind of, if you're going to work with animals, working with monkeys, even emotionally, because they're so human-like sometimes, it's an amazing experience, isn't it?
It was an amazing experience. I think the reason they're so evocative as an animal to us humans is just that they share quite a sizable amount of their genome with ours, and you can see those similarities in the way they behave. I ultimately spent a couple of months at that place and worked primarily with capuchins and spider monkeys. And my goodness, I became enamored with those creatures. One of those capuchin monkeys, so smart was he, Mediano he was called. He had the ability to beckon humans up to him and persuade them to help him crack nuts on rocks. He was very socially adept, and you have real relationships and get to know these monkeys' personalities. And you're also taking part in such an ethical, wondrous activity. You're giving these animals a second chance at a natural wild life after other human beings have robbed them of it.
How long was the time that how long was the journey between you applying for the job and being awarded it and then arriving at the sanctuary?
It's an interesting question, right? Because at first I applied, and there's a vetting process where they ask you a bunch of questions, you email back and forth, and basically within 2 weeks they offered me a place and said, come on down, how long can you stay for, all that stuff. The animals,
I said, I like monkeys, but I'm not a vet.
Exactly, yeah. They already had a vet there anyway. But the animal that you can work with depends on the amount of time you can stay. So if you're only there for a few weeks, you can work with spider monkeys. They're a little bit easier to get the hang of. Capuchins, if you're staying a bit longer, and they have a rehabbing jaguar and a rehabbing ocelot there as well.
Oh,
both
my goodness.
From the pet trade that were taken and now being rehabbed back to the wild. And the interesting thing, Adam, is the journey to get there in itself is sort of part of the test. It's in this town called Rurinabaki, and the only way to get there is by chartering like a plane, one of those weird propeller biplane things, or by getting the night bus from La Paz. Can you guess which one I did?
Even though I know you are adventurous, I would have said you might have opted for the night bus.
I got that night bus, Adam. I got on that night bus, and it goes over an infamous road that some people may be familiar with. It's called Death Road, and it goes through Bolivia right down to Rurinabaki. The whole night bus takes place on this Death Road, and my goodness, what an unusual road it is. It teeters over the side of what can only be described as a cliff, and as you're going on it, it's rocking back and forth. You're looking over the window, seeing a chasm below. It's absolutely crazy. I had an elderly Bolivian woman sat next to me. She tried to speak to me in Spanish again and again and again, and I kept on, I tried to communicate with her. I was like, oh, peligroso, this bus is horrible. And she sort of tried to talk to me back, but it all culminated with a moment where she said something to me. I looked perplexed. She said to me, "Tu entiendo nada," which means you understand nothing, and the whole bus started laughing at me. So that was my experience on the bus, but I survived and got to Rurinabaki by morning.
God, so you have been on Death Road in Bolivia. I've met a couple of people, but never had the chance to ask what it's really like. I don't even know that I knew that you went on that, so I'm going to ask you now live on air, what's it like?
Oh, well, I've actually cycled on Death Road and been on that bus on Death Road. I've done both ways. The old Death Road, which I've cycled on, and they have a new version of it now, same chasm, but it's like a different side and structure, which I rode the bus on. Cycling, I didn't find scary at all, funnily enough. You could sort of keep to the safe side and get up some speed, but on the bus, my goodness, at night time, I thought, I really hope that this driver is caffeinated. At
night?
Yeah, exactly, into the darkness.
Oh my goodness. Is it true that people chew cocoa leaves?
Cocoa leaves, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Are you from Nestle? Look at that propaganda. Yeah, they chew coca leaves. Yeah, it helps with the altitude and it helps with keeping energized.
How long's the road itself?
In miles or kilometers? No, I don't know how long it is. It took
hours.
It took a full night to get from one side to the other.
Flipping out. And did you get to the end thinking, thank goodness I was almost certain I was going to die? Or is it a little bit overhyped? Because I know that obviously there are a considerable number of people who have passed away on that road, which
Thus
is tragic.
the name Death Road. Yeah, I didn't really think I was going to die, but it was too dangerous for me to get a good night's sleep on it.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I was
A 6 out of 10.
comfortable. Yeah, 6 out of 10 on the old Pellegrosso scale. I thought that I'll probably survive this, but I am going to be tired by the time I get to Rurinabake.
Yeah, but the plane is maybe that much more dangerous. Who knows?
Exactly. So I arrive in Rurinabake. I get picked up by a representative from ONCA, which is the organisation responsible for saving, let's not pattyfoot around the word, these animals. And yeah, I basically do a day of orientation, learning what my responsibilities will be. There are other volunteers there, some arriving at the same day as me, some have been there for a while. We all have a distribution of jobs around the place. There's a central kind of communal area where we hang out, play cards, cook. We're responsible for cooking our own meals, but there's a rota, there's a dormitory, and I just got stuck in and integrated. There's an absolute plethora of things I could tell you about the experience of working with these animals. The first few days I was working with spider monkeys. You're obviously responsible for giving them a comfortable environment, filling up their water, cleaning up their poo in the enclosure that they spend the night in, because they're not fully rehabilitated to the wild yet. So they have to be in enclosures at night, and they sometimes are on specific trails and things whilst moving around. There's lots of responsibilities, but I will say this, one of the most rewarding times of my life. I don't think I've ever before felt like I was doing something so good, and also doing something which felt so in tune with nature, so in tune with the animals. I would spend long periods of time sat with a howler monkey. I was her only social support, so I would spend a lot of time with her, just one-on-one, take her for walks around the jungle. And spending time with that animal really just put me in tune with my own mind in a funny way, you know? I just felt really at peace there.
Wow. How big is a howler monkey?
About the size
Of a mastiff.
Yeah. If you could imagine a very small cockapoo, probably about that, to be honest. They vary massively in size, but Amelia was the one I was working with primarily.
Oh, wow.
And I would say she was about, maybe half a metre long.
And I've just got an image of her perched on sort of a wooden platform, and you're there just chilling out with her. And
she would often be perched on my shoulder or on my knee. I was her only social support, and she was a very young howler monkey. So a lot of the time, yeah, we would just be hanging out and playing together. And obviously, at some point in her rehabilitation process, she would have to be with other howler monkeys and be integrated, and then humans would have to take a more of a backstep approach. But at the time of her life that it was, I was able to really connect with her, go for walks in the jungle with her. This, I should say, is all taking place in the Amazon jungle in Bolivia, in the thick of the Amazon jungle. From Rurinabake, you have to cross this river going downstream for about 20 minutes in a boat, and that will get you to the bank of the Amazon where this whole encampment is.
wow. Is there like a small clearing in the rainforest, or is it still very, very thick jungle?
Very, very thick jungle, and then a clearing where the camp is, and then the actual sections where the animals are living, and they're obviously a little bit further away from the camp. So I ended up then working for the capuchin monkeys, working for them. They gave me a job interview and they employed me, those capuchins. That was about a mile away from the main human camp, because they were a little bit further on in the rehabbing process, and their camp, their sort of enclosure, the place where they live, moves further and further away from where the humans are as time goes on. So it was about a mile hike to get to where the capuchins were. And again, Adam, can't stress this enough, working with capuchins, I could only work with them when I was a little bit more experienced, but a completely different situation. They have about the intellect, the intelligence of a human 5-year-old. They're capable of lying. They're capable of misleading.
Wow.
They're the most intelligent New World monkey that there is.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
They kept you on your toes, did they?
Oh, especially that one I mentioned before, Mediano, the one who beckoned humans over and said, "Can you help me crack those nuts?" Only with hand gestures. There was also Dexter, who was sort of an ex-circus monkey who'd been rescued, and he would have his own way about him. He would constantly bow when you gave him food because that's what he'd learned to do in his time in the circus, and you'd have to, keep a short shrift with him because he was a little bit wilder of a monkey. There's all sorts of protocols. Very crazy activity learning to be with those monkeys and learning all about their individual personalities, learning which ones could feed the easiest, which ones could find their own food, which one you'd have to spend a little bit more time checking if they're okay, learning about their social stratas and structures. Will today be the day that Cheeky overtakes Dexter as alpha male of the society, or will Dexter's reign live on? Will Frodo make a claim? There's all sorts of different dynamics within them that you've got to learn to deal with. And you feed them in order of hierarchy. It's fascinating.
Wow. That is fascinating. And these monkeys as well, they've got access to the jungle, but they keep coming back because of the camp, right? You're kind of, you just mentioned that they spend the night in the cages.
Yeah, so some of them do, but most of the capuchins wouldn't spend night. They were further on in their rehab process. So the spider monkeys had an enclosure that they'd spend the night in. Most of the capuchins were entirely free. They could just use the jungle, but stayed because their troop were around there.
Right,
and then
cool.
Some of the capuchins were had smaller sort of fenced off areas where they would stay in order, because they weren't far enough in their rehab process to be just completely wild, because then they would just go off and they wouldn't survive without a troop. So there was, carefully planned radiuses where these animals could go, and the other ones would stay with the ones that couldn't go further, and that sort of thing.
That's really cool. And then if conditions and behaviours allow, the ultimate objective is for all of the animals at the sanctuary to be rehabilitated into the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the ultimate aim, is that eventually all these animals will just be like normal animals in the wild, as if their process of captivity never happened. I mean, the idea is, Adam, that these animals will eventually be entirely free. It's true rehabilitation.
That's incredible. How many people were at the sanctuary with you?
At the time I was working there were maybe 15 other volunteers. And what an amazing, probably one of the best experiences about working in the Bolivian Amazon was the people that I got to meet and work with. Just beautiful, beautiful people. We were brought together by a common love for animals, and then a common aim to give those animals the best treatment possible. So when you go to a hostel, I've mentioned before, it takes a certain type of person to be in a hostel in La Paz, and therefore the chances that we'd get on with them are more than if you just met someone down the pub at home. But that experience is doubled when you're on a workaway somewhere like the Bolivian Amazon. What processes had to take place for that person also to be looking after capuchins in the middle of the rainforest? They have to be a pretty special person, and everyone I met there was so amazing.
They're potentially willing to risk their own life on death road.
There you go. Exactly. Even the process of getting there is unusual. There's a lot of stories from that Bolivian Amazon I'd love to share, but I think before we go on and learn about them, now would be a perfect time to have a little unwind via a short meditation break. Working with capuchins, spider monkeys, howler monkeys in the Bolivian rainforest is a workaway done by me and one of the greatest travel experiences I've ever had. So I've been there for a good number of weeks. I've started to learn the rhythms of the rainforest. I'm waking up, I'm having breakfast with the other volunteers, I'm walking up to Capuchin camp, I'm giving them their breakfast, I'm observing them, I'm perhaps reading a book while the sounds of the rainforest are going on around me. I've got into the swing of things, Adam.
Great choice of words.
Yeah, exactly. It was like Jungle Book out there, but with animals that were being rehabilitated in a very ethical manner.
Yeah. Was it all starting to feel like home for you?
It was really starting to feel like home. Yeah, I loved it. I can't stress enough that this may be the time of my life where, in some sense, I felt the healthiest and most in tune with the world around me. But I want to tell a little bit of a story about something that went a bit wrong when I was there, because I think it's interesting to describe all the animals of the rainforest and not just those beautiful simians. So this story takes place when I was up there working with the capuchins, and there were actually two tiny baby capuchins. They were just about 1 month, 2 months old. Diablo, one of them was called, and the other one was called Lilith. They were beautiful little creatures. And I was charged with feeding these guys milk every day at the end of the day, right?
Right.
And so I'm there with another volunteer, and we don't have the milk, and it's almost time for feeding. So I go, no worries, I'm going to run down to the human camp and get the milk and run back up. I'll be as fast as possible. I'm sprinting down this mound, this little mile hike down to the human camp. I'm thinking, oh God, I get Diablo and Lilith, that milk. Can't wait. It's got to be sooner rather than later. I'm running. And I put my hand on a tree to stabilize myself as I'm going down the hill. And can you guess what happened?
Put your hand on a tree to stabilize yourself. Does it involve monkey excrement?
Much worse than that. I feel a jolt that emanates on my hand and goes through my entire body. I look at my hand expecting to see a bloodied stump, and there it is, just a tiny, tiny pinprint of a dot. And I see there on the tree where I put my hand, Paraponera clavata, Hormiga 24. The bullet ant.
Oh, shit.
In 1775, these nasty little creatures were discovered. The only thing ever to score 4 points on Justin Smith's pain index. The bullet ant is regarded as the king of insect stings, the most painful thing that you can get stung by. 30 millimeters of pure anger and atrociousness in ant form. This thing had sighted my hand, come in there to stabilize myself. It had inserted its stinger into the palm of my hand, and from that moment on, pain, unadulterated pain, Adam. It was horrible.
Was it like a stabbing pain, or did you just go numb? Or
it's called bullet ant for a reason, and that reason can only be because its sting feels like a bullet.
That's interesting. So you didn't see the ant and then the pain started. You felt the pain immediately. It wasn't like the adrenaline was saving you from the pain. I mean, it was...
I thought my hand had been blown off. I looked at my hand expecting not to see a hand there anymore. I thought that I'd activated like a poacher's trap or something. Like I thought something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. I kind of was shaking, like bringing my hand up like, oh my God. Justin Schmidt describes a bullet ant sting as like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your heel. So that's the kind of pain that we're dealing with here.
Jesus. And then when it comes to your knowledge of bullet ants, as soon as you saw the bullet ant, did you think, oh, that's a bullet ant? I'd been told that these had been in the area, or were you just like,
I'd seen them.
That ant's got a powerful sting.
I'd seen them before during my time in the jungle. You know, you see tarantulas and snakes and all sorts of things when you're living there. I'd seen the bullet ant and been wary of them my whole time. I knew a little bit about them, and obviously I'd heard stories that other people had told about being stung by them. You stay away normally, mate, but this thing blew my hand off, and I kept on like going down to get that milk. I ran the milk back up to the monkeys. The thing about the bullet ant sting is it gets worse and worse incrementally. It's not just that's the pain. You start to get used to my hand's just being blown off feeling, and then it increases by a notch until you get used to it again, and then it increases a notch. It gets worse and worse.
Was it going up your arm and into your body, or was it very localized in your hand?
quite localized in my hand, but it's a radiating sort of pain. But the interesting thing is, I was there then with the milk, trying to sort of feed the monkeys. The other volunteer was there, like, "Oh my God, your hand!" It just looks like it doesn't look like much at all, right? But I was describing to her the pain of it. And the other monkeys, the other capuchins, who I have like a relationship with at this point, they know me and I know them. They can see that something's wrong with me, and they just sort of, they're creeping down the trees, looking at me with curious eyes. And one of them comes and grabs the baby's milk bottle out of my hand, sensing that it was a moment of weakness, and runs up into the trees with the baby's milk. And
Brilliant.
They're all dashing about, these capuchins, going frantic because they notice that the person that brings us food is feeling ill. And they're all dashing around. It's wild out there now. The other volunteers like, "Oh no, the milk. We're trying to get it back." We're sort of begging, pleading with the capuchins, "Please bring Diablo's milk back." It's all gone wild because I've got this sting in my hand.
So that was still the primary concern then, was the milk. You still had to get on
I
with your
was
job.
less useful than I normally would have been, but still, you got to feed. Diablo and Lilith needed to eat.
So these stings, they're not life-threatening. They're just something that they're going to go away with time, or do you need special treatment for it? How does it work?
Yeah, they
Pour
are
some
something
milk on
that
it?
goes away with time. Yeah, exactly. I think so. There's a tribe in Brazil whose coming of age ceremony is to weave 80 of these ants into a mitten. And they put that mitten on young children, like 16 years old, and they get stung by these bullet ants, and they run through the jungle with that pain searing through their hand as a coming of age trial. So not life-threatening in that sense, but it is absolutely crazy. And it was definitely the only time I felt pain that was somewhat psychedelic in nature. As the evening went on, we sort of got that milk back and finished up for the day. And I was like annoying with pain. We were playing cards and I was like shaking and talking rapidly and knocking things over. Some fans of tripology will say you talk annoyingly always anyway. But before the bullet ant situation, I was very laconic in nature. So yeah, it's crazy. Psychedelic pain. It's really, really horrible. It adrenalizes you because it's so painful. I ended up just going to bed and bearing it for a while. And what can I say? In the morning, I woke up and no pain at all. It lasts about 12 to 24 hours.
That long?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, we don't want to be in the business of judging any other cultural practices, but putting on a mitten of those bullet ants, it sounds like a shit idea.
Yeah, and they do it several times as well. It's like you'd think that would be enough, but they do it over the period of a year. They do it like a dozen times to really get used to the point of stinging and get used to the idea that they go through hardship.
Is there a medic on site? Could you go to someone and say, "Hey, look, I've just been stung by a bullet ant. I just want to make sure that there's no, consequences if it doesn't get treated," or how do these things happen?
There was a vet on site who was treating the monkeys, but as soon as I got into her office, she was more concerned about the fact that I didn't have a tail than she was that I'd been stung by the bullet ant. She went, "You're the most unusual monkey I've ever seen."
You just had to grin and bear it then.
Grin and bear it, yeah. And everyone there was kind of tough, so I think I rubbed some numbing agent on it, which helped a little bit, and drank a couple of beers. But I can't stress enough, Adam, that whole story, bullet ant included, monkeys included, the volunteers included, what an amazing, special time. And it pretty much sums up what's so beautiful about travel, because I would just be unable to have those experiences without travel as being a vector for them. I also hung out with a little baby ocelot during my time there. I used to walk him in the jungle. What an amazing experience. There's so many stories from my time in the Bolivian Amazon that I'd love to share with the audience. We can't obviously share them all today, but please write in if you'd like to hear more stories from the Bolivian Amazon. It's tripologypodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram @tripologypodcast.
What an incredible story. I would be absolutely amazed if anyone hears this episode and doesn't immediately want to stop what they're doing and go and, help save monkeys in the Amazon.
But let's just deal with that for a second. Work away, right? Whatever your passion is, whatever your beliefs about life are, whatever you want to do more than anything else in the world, for a lot of people, their life leads them on a very linear path, right? You do this, you go to university, you don't go to university, you get this qualification, you go on to do this career. But travel doesn't limit you. It does nothing but open doors. You can go and do whatever you dream of doing. Just go with a beautiful mindset and a willingness to help. Be hardworking, be kind to people, and you can engage in whatever activity you want to do. I've gone on to work with animals in other places, and now I consider myself, I've got a little bit of experience working with animals, so that's good.
Yeah, being able to learn whilst on the road and be in different environments, it's such an incredible opportunity that I wish more and more people knew about.
Absolutely. So yeah, a little shout out to Workaway. It's a great platform to do all that stuff with. There are others, but I personally use and have used Workaway a lot. I think that's a really lovely place and a great time to round out this episode. I want to hear you tell a story, so maybe next week we can hear about a Trail from Adam's trip around the world. How about it?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Would you believe that my right hand has started tingling?
Oh, there you go. That's the sort of psychic pain that you can feel when your best friend tells you about the bullet ant. Hopefully we haven't set off tingling hands all over the world as a result of this podcast. But if you're there with your hand tingling, raise 3 fingers up in a tripological salute and we're going to blast off to the future. Write to us, tripologypodcast@gmail.com, on Instagram @tripologypodcast. Follow us on Patreon, where you get an extra bit of content after the episode airs. Or if you want, check us out everywhere. We've got YouTube, we've got Instagram, we've got everything. So just why not be a tripologist? There's so many ways that you can interact with us, isn't there, Adam?
That's it. Come and join the global community.
Yeah, it's a global community. Right, I don't know about you, Adam, but today's starting to look like it's not nice out there, is it? It's sort of gone on too long today, and I think why not just put it to one side and enter into a bright, vibrant future. I'm going to blast off to next week. Will you join me?
I'm right behind you.
Let's go there now. Bye.
Bye.